Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Thursday Tea with Sammy. Today, I have a very special guest that I want to introduce to you. Are you ready? I have my friend here, Kylan Bob. Um, we are so fortunate to have her here today with us, having this conversation. Kylan, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to lately?
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I co-own a private practice in the Chicagoland called Inner Peace Psychological Care, and we do individual therapy for I think 12 and older, pretty comfortably there. And then we also do psychological and neuropsychological testing for 6 years and older. Let's see what else I've been up to. I just finished my postdoctoral degree in clinical psychopharmacology. Illinois is one of the few states where psychologists can prescribe, so I'm working on that. That's probably another 2 year goal in the future. See what else. Continue to work for veterans however that I can, and yeah, just living the life.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've been up to some wonderful things.
Okay, yeah, try to stay busy.
Yeah, I really appreciate you talking with us about this. We know that elections can bring up some pretty strong emotions for many people, and that it's important to remember that focusing on understanding each other can help us bridge those divides and to promote some constructive conversations. Um, what are some practical ways that you think people can manage these strong emotions that are coming up during the election season and after?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's still pretty raw, right? I
Yeah.
was just reflecting not that long ago, like a few minutes ago, that it's
Mm.
been 11 days. It's been 11 days since the election, and it feels like almost like a lifetime ago. But there's still so much raw emotions because I think on one hand there's that sense of victory for a group of people, right? Like, oh, we won, and like it's this game that we won. But
Yeah.
then on the other side, there's a sense of defeat or feeling like that maybe they failed, or maybe there's a sense of dread that might be coming. There's this impending doom. Like, what does this mean for us? There's this sense of uncertainty. It's kind of scary. I think ultimately it's about the sense of uncertainty. Like, what is going to happen in the future? Like, how does this impact me? Um, and I think it's easy to get caught up with the fear and anxiety associated with it. And when we are exposing ourselves to things that kind of add to it, like social media, how we bring it up in conversations with people, whether they're like-minded or not, it definitely stokes those fires of like anxiety and uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's perfectly normal for people to feel anxious or even frustrated, and for some people to feel perfectly content with what happened, right? But recognizing these emotions can be the first step in handling them effectively.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do get that sometimes it feels a little bit divisive in the way that that the election makes us feel. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Is that something you've noticed with in conversation, or maybe like the things that you may be reading or hearing about in the news? Like there's this divisiveness.
yeah, definitely. I mean, even if we just look at the way that the news are being portrayed, right? Depending on which which news you're watching or which newspaper you're reading, the way that the news are framed are completely different, depending on which person you talk to, Um, somebody could be very enthusiastic about possible changes, while others could be really dreading and feeling this impending doom, you know. Um, so it's hard. I think it's hard, and I think, it's important to recognize that this is going to bring up some strong emotions, and that it's okay to feel those, but also to think about what are the things that are going to be most helpful, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to also have those Productive conversations, how can we have a productive conversation with somebody rather than feeling divided? How can we understand each other and kind of build empathy in that way?
It makes me think of like the strategies and skills and all the training that we receive as clinical psychologists. Like
Yeah.
we have to think about, okay, how do we have effective communication with one another? Like not only from a psychologist to the patient, but also let's say the patient is bringing up like I'm having a hard time communicating with others. And so politics is like this extra layer, right? Like it's one of those taboo topics. Like we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about people's kids, right? Those
Right.
are the things. But the skills of effective communication definitely applies here too. Like how like it makes me think of like the Gottman method, like stonewalling and defense, like
Yes.
not be defensive when we talk to one another and really taking the effort to listen, even if it doesn't make me feel good, I guess. Like if I listen to this person and just even taking the time to like sit and really soak in what they have to say, there's this idea that I'm agreeing with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that is true. I can understand it brings up like uncomfortable feelings,
Yes.
but conflict or disagreement is how we grow and develop. Like if we continue with the status quo or if we not take other perspectives into consideration, it limits us growth. It limits in a way of growing or developing or seeing things from other perspectives. And so I think like those effective skills or effective communication skills can be really
Yes.
helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the listening skill is often one of the hardest things that that people find, especially when you have to hear something that you don't agree with or it doesn't fit in with your values. But like you said, being able to listen to somebody and put yourself in in their shoes, sorry, to try to understand where they're coming from. What I've found, and I don't know if you found this as well, but what I've found is that even the people who disagree politically tend to agree on some aspects and disagree on others. And so finding that commonality can also be really helpful and understanding where they're coming from on the things that you disagree with can also be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. And it reminds me of like a recent conversation that I had where this person and I didn't agree politically. But of course, it didn't really come up from my side. But anyway, here we go. But this person I didn't really agree politically. But this person said that, these are the things that are important to me now, but it doesn't mean that I don't care about the other things that the other party is like that's important to them. And that kind of really sums it up in a kind of nice way. Like, or it really got me thinking about this extreme sides or this all or nothing thinking that we're engaging in right now. Like, if you don't agree with me, that means you are against the other thing. Like,
Right.
you're this, that means you're definitely against this, which I'm noticing that it's not maybe perhaps true. Like if the economy is a like priority for some like people, it doesn't mean that they don't care about how certain things impact other people. But in this moment, this is what's important to them. And vice versa. Like if this person cares about the protection of certain people or certain marginalized community, it doesn't mean that they don't care about the economy or safety or, like I think we all care about the same issues,
Yeah.
just in different ways.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have any recommendations for how to start a conversation with someone who thinks differently than you do or holds a different political view?
Hmm. So starting is like when you say starting, there's like an intention behind it.
Right.
Yeah, like
Like
I
really
don't know.
trying to understand somebody else's point of view, right? So you would have to kind of start that conversation.
Yeah. Um, recently I somehow it came up in my family. We were sitting around the game table. It was like game night or something like that, or maybe it was dinner. It was right after dinner or something. We haven't started the game yet,
Uh-huh.
and somehow I started talking about like different things that were going on in the community, like
Okay.
scholarship and education, and my nephew was there, and he's 20, and I started slowly kind of introducing that topic, and I was like, what do you think? Like, I'm curious to hear from your perspective, like as a
Right.
20-year-old, like what is your perspective or understanding about these topics? And without like saying anything about politics or what it means. And I have brought up like, there's some people who have different perspectives. What are your thoughts about that? And I'll give him an example of a perspective.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe for some people they would say, why do I have to pay for other people's health care? Or, this doesn't directly impact me in any way. Like, I don't have any health issues. Why do I have to contribute for this universal health care? Or I don't have any kids and oh, that's what it was. It was like talking about the education system. I had asked my brother, I was like, hey, how do you feel about your property taxes and paying for the public school system if all your kids are out in college? And so, he kind of brought his perspective. I think I took him a little bit off guard.
Yeah.
Um, but then since my nephew was there, we brought him into the conversation and was like, what do you think? But I think if I go in with an open heart and open mind and in a manner that isn't accusatory, but more like curious, like, hey, I'm curious what you think. Like
Right.
this is an issue.
Yeah.
And I think being mindful of the words that you use, the tone that you approach the person with, like that will, and then being like actively listening and not like, well, let me tell you my perspective first before you give an
Right.
opinion. Yeah.
Definitely. Yes. I love that going in with that curiosity and just trying to find out where they're coming from because it's not always about persuading the other person to change their mind or to change their views, but just listening and trying to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about you? Do you have any like strategies that you use when bringing?
Yeah. Well, similar to you, but actually I really like how you brought in the perspectives of like the different age groups because that makes a lot of sense that somebody who's maybe 20 would have a completely different view than somebody who has kids in school and somebody whose kids are already in college, right? So I love that. I also think just having that curiosity, like you were saying, just if you're going to start a conversation, knowing that this conversation isn't necessarily to change the person's mind or to argue or to make your point heard, it's really just about finding out what the other person is thinking, where they're coming from. And like you said, at one point in somebody's life, that view might be different and who knows, maybe the next stage of their life that view will change or even within this same stage, right? They might believe that something is important now and maybe in 2 or 3 months they might think, actually this other thing is more important to me now. So that curiosity I think is really important and just coming in not trying to change anything but simply just trying to understand.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
think it's also helpful to get like to approach like the low hanging fruit. Like what is less threatening in this
Right.
moment? Like
Yes.
what seems like it's not gonna like tip the boat over and now we're gonna
Right.
argue about
Right.
something. But knowing those signs too, like when things start to get a little hot, like, okay,
Mhm.
I feel like we're getting a little bit heated right now. How do I
Yeah.
rein it back? You know,
Right.
like how do I it's definitely an art, right? The art of communication. Like how
Mhm.
do I read the room and not get caught up in the emotions of it? And it's not just my emotions, but it's also other people and valuing the relationships that you have. Like I don't want to destroy my relationship with my brother or my nephew. So
Right.
I'm going to be very mindful about this relationship
Right.
going into it and knowing, okay, I'm still going to ultimately protect this relationship first.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think in relationships, we do this thing where when we first meet somebody, we give them a little bit of trust and we see how we do, right? And then if we feel that that person is trustworthy, then we give a little bit more trust and then we see how we do. And this is kind of how we build relationships. And at some point we decide this is a person I can fully trust, or this is a person I can just have fun with, but maybe not tell my secrets to, or this is a person that I can fully trust and tell my secrets to, and I know that they're not going to judge and they're going to love me no matter what. And I think that we can take that into conversations as well, that we can give a little bit of trust and talk about something, like you said, maybe not as triggering, and we can simply start a low-key conversation and see how that goes, right? And if we notice that we are able to have that type of conversation with the person, then maybe we can take it up a notch, you know. But I think it is important to start slow and to just see where we go with it, you know, and ultimately protect that relationship, like you said.
Yeah, I really like that. Like just kind of testing the waters to see where you are
Yeah.
in this relationship. I'm also glad that you brought up like the age part too. Because I think it's important to like model certain conversations and
Yeah.
like, you can have tough conversations and it can be safe, like
Yes.
I wonder how much that has contributed to the political conversation that we're having now. Like, oh, we don't talk about politics. Like, this is
Right.
taboo. So if we don't talk about it, we don't develop the skills on navigating it
Yeah.
because politics is really important, like across the country. And, we have to get involved. We want to stay involved. So then we can be part of the conversation and be able to enact some sort of change, hopefully in a positive direction or in some sort of direction that we want.
Yes.
But, as the older adults or like, I don't know, however you want to describe us, we have to be able to model these tough
Yes.
conversations and say, hey, it's okay. We can have disagreements and it can be okay. We can have immature conversations. We don't have to yell. We don't have to throw things at one another. Not, I'm just being
Yes.
dramatic, but we can, we don't have to call each other names or insult one another. If we could show, like, we can have conflict by or we could have these like difficult conversations by listening and,
Yes.
picking turns, that's
Right.
really, and hopefully that sets up the next generation to be a part of politics or be a
Right.
part of like having these difficult conversations and being okay with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's okay to agree to disagree. You know,
Mhm.
you don't have to have the same views as the people around us. You know, there are some things that are very important to us and are a very special value to us that might feel like, you know, this is something that I can't, that I have to stand for, right? Um, but we don't have to have the same views on everything, you know, that it's okay to say, you know, I can see your point of view and I disagree, but I understand where you're coming from, you know.
A question. Why do you think it's so hard to agree to disagree?
I think we feel very strongly about our beliefs, you know, and sometimes when we get caught up in how strongly we believe in that, we forget that that's just our belief, you know, and that other people can think differently, you know. And you know, I don't want to compare it to something as simple as this, but um if we think about taste in food, right? I hate pickles. My husband loves pickles. That's it has nothing to do with the pickle. The pickle's just a pickle. My my distaste for pickles is mine, and his love for pickles is his. It really has nothing to do with the pickle, right? So I think if we think about just, you know, I can't talk him into not liking pickles just as much as he can't talk me into liking pickles. And now I know that that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, and I definitely can't imagine that something that we would talk about politically would have any relevance to pickles. Um, but I think it's important to know that, there are things that we believe in or that we like or dislike or that that's important to us or that's a value to us, that it's just not the same for others. And a lot of that has to do with the things that we learned as we were growing up and the experiences that we've had and even how our parents raised us or how other grown-ups in our society thought and talked about, right? Um, and so when we grow up, it's like a color, right? If I pull this up and I say, "Hey, this is green," you would say, "No, it's not," because all your life you've known that this is not green. But if all my life people had told me this is green, I would argue with you and I would say, "Of course this is green. This is green." Um, why? Because all my life I've heard that that's green, you know? And so a lot of our beliefs and a lot of the things that we come to the table with are because this is what we've heard all along, and this is what we've been taught, and this is what, other people in our social circle believed, and so we have those beliefs. But I think if we can understand that the other person has different beliefs because they may have had different experiences or different upbringings or, different people raising them. And, it's not necessarily all that person, but the circle that they grew up with and the experiences that they've had and all that, then we can see it as something that's not necessarily like my value or theirs, but it's more um, this is a reflection of who I am from the experiences that I've had in my life. And this might be a reflection of who the person is from the experiences they've had in their life. Um, and it might help us to have a little bit of empathy for that person or for them to have a little more empathy for us or for our beliefs, you know. But it is difficult because, like I said, if I thought this was green, how could I say, no, this is not green, this is peach. No, this is green. This has always been green for me. So when it's something that we believe so strongly because it's something we've always known, for example, it's hard to believe that somebody else could be right.
Yeah. And it becomes a part of our like when we intertwine our beliefs with our identity,
Hmm.
I think it like hurts so much more, right? Like
Right.
becomes like I'm attacking your belief,
Right.
therefore I'm attacking who you are as a person, which I don't
Yes.
know if we could like disentangle that.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like, I am a pickle hater and
Right.
you're a pickle lover. That means your identity as a pickle lover is wrong.
Yes. And I cannot talk to a pickle lover.
Can't talk to a pickle lover.
I'm gonna stonewall you because I can't believe you're a pickle lover.
But that is like kind of what's
Yeah.
happening, right? Like,
Yes.
and I definitely understand what you're saying. There's complexity, and but if we were to say, we're going to reduce this idea to like the beliefs and identity, then we end up in this like us versus them sort of mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, well, we're the pickle haters.
Yes.
We don't want to talk to the pickle lovers, and
Yes.
then we end up with these like teams, and it becomes about win
Right.
and loss. Like, who's the
Exactly.
losers?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think when outside of sports, outside of sports,
Yes.
I don't know if that would be as effective.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that all this impacts our well-being?
Hmm. Yeah. Like all this meaning like politics
Oh,
or
yeah, politics and like
the
the difficulty in
election.
having the conversations and even like you were saying, we don't talk about politics, which, if we don't talk about politics, then how can we understand each other and how can we figure out each other's point of view? And as adults, how can we role model for the next generation? you know, and all that, how does that affect our well-being? Because I'm seeing people who are really being affected by the stress of the elections and, really being impacted. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I see like different camps, right? Like they're either very like passionate,
Hmm.
can't believe that this happened, that there's a sense of like sadness, defeat, or grief, anxiety, uncertainty, and all of that can definitely continue to manifest internally. There's a lot of stress. They're tense. It's showing up at work. It's showing up at school. Showing up in their relationship. I see that the tension is brought up in dinner conversations, and like I can't talk to so and so right now.
Right.
I don't want them in my life anymore. I'm unfriending this person on Facebook and Instagram. Like, can you believe they post that? Like, there's a lot of big emotions that's happening.
Right.
This.
Right.
And I think if we just take a step back and take a beat, did we are we really seeing the overall impact of how we're also contributing to the divide and
Right.
to the frustration and to the anger and the irritability? Like if we are pushing the other people away instead of embracing them and saying, hey, let me understand your perspective. I want to know why you feel the way that you feel.
Yeah.
And I think we're just isolating and siloing ourselves even more.
Right.
And that can lead to other like physical and mental health conditions too.
I think there's really a lot of anxiety on both sides because there seems to be such a big divide that there are a lot of friendships that are ending or um people who are making comments on social media that are not really helpful, you know. I see a lot of just really hurtful comments both ways, you know. Um and so I do think that there is this sense of anxiety and even depression just from lost friendships or disbelief that one person maybe was on one side of the spectrum while the other one was on the other side. And, how could I have been friends with this person who has these beliefs? And so there's a lot of like self-questioning, a lot of guilt, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression that is coming up with this. And this is really affecting our well-being. And I'm not just talking about mental health, but with mental health also comes our physical health. So I'm seeing even just within my clients, a lot more people are getting sick. And it makes sense, when our stress goes up, our immune system doesn't work properly, and it's easier for us to get sick, and then we stay sick longer, right? So I think it is important to pay attention to that and to notice, what it's doing to us. And anytime that we see that something is not working well or is actually detrimental to us, I think it's a good time to stop and think, how can we make this better? How can we change this? Um, and so I think it is important to think about our overall well-being, and that includes, our health, it includes our mental health, it includes our relationships, it includes everything. So if we are noticing, we're getting to a point where, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm getting sick, then something's not right, right? How can we do something differently?
Yeah, election stress is a real thing.
Yeah,
Attention to be pulled. We're like maybe doom
yeah.
scrolling on the phone and looking at one news article after another one. And then
Yes.
the conversations can cause a lot of tension. Like, okay, how am I going to show up at school today? How am I going to show up at work today? Am I going to be fully present? Am I going to lose my job because I haven't been able to focus and concentrate?
Right.
Kind of compiles and
Yes.
really, really builds up over time. And then it could be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I like that you mentioned work because it affects us in so many different areas of our life. It's not just our physical health or our mental health, but it's like work and relationships and school. I have some clients who are in college or went back to school for um a graduate degree or whatever, and they're having a really hard time at school too. And so it really seeps into all these different areas of our life.
Yeah. I think it was interesting that you brought up like I thought this person would have the same perspective as me, and all of a sudden they're kind of like they may learn that the person that they may have admired or had looked up to
Right.
share different beliefs, and that like almost that fall from grace sort of
Yeah.
thing. Like when you put someone on a pedestal and then learn that they may not share similar values as you, and then there's that disappointment that comes with it.
Right. Yeah.
Who do I look up to now?
Right.
Why? Like, there's this like reality that could be really painful.
Yes.
And that's something to acknowledge too.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Do you have any tips for people to maintain more of a balanced mindset when they're feeling this way?
Yeah, I think it's really tough because when you're surrounded with like social media and news, what helps me is recognizing how much progress that we have made, even though it doesn't feel like it, right? Like, well, I think in the immediate sense, it felt like me, like who knows whether they're, I don't want to take sides or anything. That's the
Yeah.
point. But I think in the immediate sense, there's this like, have we made progress? Have we made some change? Now we're heading in the right direction. Like there's so many perspectives on what they think this, or I didn't want to vote for either of them, like both of them. I didn't participate in the election at all.
Mhm.
Our country is doomed anyway. There's so many different perspectives.
Right.
But I think if when we're climbing up a mountain, we just see what's in front of us. And then we look up and it feels so daunting and overwhelming, like, oh, we're never going to get to the top, right?
Right.
But if we take a step back from like a bird's eye view and recognize that we have made plenty of progress over the past, just even the past 100 years, like I was just reflecting, like World War One was almost 100 years ago, right?
Right.
And like since then, what has changed? Like there was segregation, and then like there is women and minorities are able to vote now. You know, there's increase in rights for minority population and communities. Even I was just saying, like, in 2015, women were finally allowed to serve in combat, right?
Wow.
And
That's
that's
not that long ago. It's crazy to think that.
that's 9 years ago. Like women have been serving in combat for years, right? Like since the American Revolution, women have been in combat, have fought
Right.
for this country. And finally they were like, okay, yeah, we officially approve you to hold a combat position in 2015.
Wow.
Believe that.
Yeah.
So even if it feels, I guess I would say like perhaps it feels like we're taking a step back or that progress haven't been made, but we take a bigger or a larger perspective or a bird's eye view of it, like we are slowly putting one step in front of the other. And to not be discouraged by this,
Yeah.
we have to continue to fight for what's important to us. And I recognize that we're standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us,
Yes.
and progress will continue. And whatever we're reaping, right? Like, or sorry, is that the word? Whatever we're sowing, we
Yeah.
may not reap it like
Yes.
it'll be like 2, 3 generations from now, right? Like
Right.
the people who have fought for our rights before, we're kind of
Right.
enjoying it now, the,
Yes.
the ability to have a voice at the table.
Right.
There's people like women of color that's serving in Congress,
Yes.
having leadership positions, they're owning businesses. Like, look at you and me, right? We're
Right.
businesses.
Yes.
That's progress because that hasn't been done 50 years ago, 50 plus years ago.
Right.
That is what motivates me. That knowing that and knowing that I will continue to do what I can. So then maybe 50 years from now, someone will be able to benefit from the work that we're doing.
Yes. Yeah. I love that point of view. It's so important to think about where we came from and where we are now. And like you said, to look at the big picture. Because when we just look at what's in front of us, that can be really scary and it can seem very daunting. But when we look at the big picture, we can see that progress. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. Some of the things that you were bringing up, I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. you know. So
Yeah.
it's nice that you were able to bring that perspective. And I also like something that you said where we have to continue to do the work. And I was recently reading an article by Martin Seligman who talked about exactly that, whether you got what you wanted or you didn't get what you wanted in this election, that it is important to continue to do the work, to not feel like, okay, my job is done, or to feel like, oh, well, things didn't go my way, so now I'm just going to forget about it. But it is always important to continue to do the work, to continue to advocate, and to continue to be assertive and in politics, and do the things that you've been doing up until now or even more, right? To really get involved in the process. And I think that from a mental health point of view, that really is helpful for us. When we feel like there's something that we're doing that's productive, that can be really helpful in that we don't feel like we've lost a battle, or like we're not helping in any way to gain the things that we want. Um, but if we look at it more like big picture, it's exactly what you said. We're taking the steps now so that future generations can also enjoy what we've been working on.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
good.
Right.
They're tough conversations for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they are tough conversations.
yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
yeah, we shouldn't give up. Like that's a really great point. Like we shouldn't give up. We continue to, I think we should also lean on the people who add to our lives too. Like there
yes,
are allies out there. There's
right,
allies, there's people who have similar views who I don't think all is lost. And the
right,
more that we can have these conversations and listen to one another, then I know that we're not alone in this either,
right.
right? Like we're not alone in this. We can do this together. And there's people who lift other people up. Oh,
Yeah.
I was just listening to this book. But I forgot who it was, like maybe John Maxwell, like the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Okay.
Have you heard it? He
Yeah.
brings up the story in this book about like how we lift each other up.
Yeah.
And he said that he will bring people on when he's doing these talks, he will bring people on stage and he would push the other person down. Like
Oh,
if I'm pushing them down, do you see what I'm doing? I'm going down too. Like if I'm
good.
pushing you down, I have to go down. But if I'm lifting you up, you and I can go up together. And
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of like a really meaningful like example. Like if we all want to grow and develop and be better as individuals, as a community, as a country, then we have to lift each other up, is no matter what community that we're
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
don't give up the fight. We just
Exactly. Yeah.
it's all part of the progress, right? Like I
Yes.
think hopefully this motivates people, like not just this conversation, right? Like hope this conversation was good, that'll motivate people, but I'm hoping that the election and what came out of it, what we learned about this country, or maybe in the future, what past 4 years, future 4 years, whatever. I hope this motivates people to act and not be apathetic, right? Like, don't give
Yes.
up. Don't like say, okay, I'm done. There's nothing I could do. Like, it's so easy to want to do that. And I'm just going to focus on me. Yes, definitely focus on you and engage in self-care and all that stuff. But don't be apathetic.
Right. Right. And I think before we go, we need to show everybody our mugs because they're so cute. I have my Trust Me, I'm a Doctor mug. What do you have over there, Kai?
I have my meh.
Perfect. I hope you like this week's Thursday Tea with Sammy, and this week also with Dr. Kylan Bob. If you liked it, leave us a comment, subscribe, come back and see me next week. I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great week.